Welcome to the TriMetric Roadmap, powered by Business Freedom Advisors, the podcast for business owners who want to grow their business and enjoy their life. Hey, I'm your host, Scott Landis, creator of the TriMetric tracking system and author of Balancing Act. If you're tired of chasing success at the expense of your health, your marriage, or your peace of mind, you're in the right place. On this show, we help you track what really matters: business health, life quality, and leadership performance, all in one simple, powerful system. Because when those get out of sync, everything else starts to break down. Our goal here is to help you align it all so you can lead with clarity, scale with purpose, and finally enjoy the freedom you've been working so hard to create. And if it feels like no one's ever shown you how to pull that off, this podcast might just be the missing link you've been quietly searching for. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the TriMetric Roadmap podcast, brought to you by Business Freedom Advisors. I'm your host, Scott Landis, along here with Jeff Jacob. And today we have a guest we'll be interviewing, Mario Tovar. He's a CEO and president of CCMC Advanced Technologies, where he leads the development of Prometheus. Ooh, what's Prometheus? We're going to talk all about it. It's a patent-pending AI forecasting platform designed to help businesses and governments see risk before they happen. Wow, that sounds cool. Let's get more into that. But before that, Mario, he has a background in finance, economics, intelligence analysis. I guess he's pretty smart. Mario has grown CCMC from an idea into a company with 6 different patent filings, an experienced leadership team, and a vision to stabilize the world through predictive modeling. He's passionate about applying advanced machine learning to real-world problems in finance, energy, logistics, and policy. Gosh, Jeff, we're not going to have anything to talk about today. Making foresight accessible not just to Wall Street or governments, but to founders and business leaders everywhere, which is you, which is why you're here listening to us, because you're probably a founder or business leader. You know how we are always looking at the things from a TriMetric lens. We're looking at leadership development, we're looking at business health, and we're looking at life quality. And with that, we are excited to have Mario Tovar here to kind of just enlighten us on all of this genius stuff and these patents and everything. So Mario, thanks for being with us here today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And thank you for the wonderful introduction.
You sound quite impressive there.
Yeah. Yeah. Where does that take your mind, Jeff?
Well, every time we've talked with Mario, I've had to have Google up so I can figure out what he's talking about. And he talks about things at a very high level, and I'm excited for everyone else to be able to hear from him today.
Yes, I have my special ChatGPT thread here just in case I need to counsel with AI on the side here. So, but Mario, thanks for being here. And tell us about your vision. And then I do want to go into a little bit of your background and stuff and just get to know you a little bit. But start off with your vision. What is the vision for Prometheus?
Yeah, the ultimate goal is to really provide global stability. Our company's logo is providing security, stability, and trust through verified, refined, and standardized information. And so basically, at the end of the day, is how do we work together from a country standpoint or from industry leaders, and then basically trying to make, really good decisions. And so our ultimate goal is to how do we identify sort of, distressed events, recessions, if you will, or just making a bad decision and then simulating it and then hopefully helping leaders to make a better decision at the end of the day.
Yeah, more knowledge and more foresight. Those are keys that we talk a lot about on the show, especially when we talk about, just the analysis of business financials. And I know we've been talking about, how could we work with your technology to make our stuff even better? But that's so key, Jeff. That's really in your department, like that foresight and analytics. And Jeff, what's your thoughts and what's your question for Mario?
Well, it's common knowledge that past behavior can predict future events, but what you're talking about goes beyond just past behavior, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, a little bit. I truly believe in some regards it kind of does and kind of doesn't. It's kind of a weird situation there. Like the economy, for instance, is just a metaphysical, version of humanity where we have our emotions kind of tied into it. We may not be able to see it, but it's truly there. And I think at the end of the day, we've done a very good job at being able to kind of track everything. We've embedded technology into our cars, into our factories, into our banks, so on and so forth. And that produces a ton of information that we can use to kind of get a better understanding about what could potentially happen. And at the end of the day, humans are the ones, making these decisions. And sometimes, we try our hardest to make the best decisions, but we're missing those crucial, that crucial information to help us. And so my job is, my goal is to provide a technology that can see far beyond what humans cannot see, and hopefully, show them in the simplest way possible. And that's kind of the goal is, hey, make a good decision here.
Yeah, I can just hear somebody driving in the car listening to this and saying, "Okay, wait a second, how do you do that?" From a place of kind of understanding what we have some, some with AI, the ability to analyze things at a high level that we didn't before. But what I'm impressed with is Prometheus. It seems like it even goes beyond that. It almost seems like, not to be hyperbolic, but like it's like the closest thing you can get to a crystal ball right now.
As honestly, yeah, it's a good way of looking at it. And it's yeah, like I think it's just we have the technology now, and this technology is relatively new, looking at it from a high level AI, marketing standpoint, but it is truly just advanced machine learning. It's like a hybrid of, statistics and physics based, theories, and we just turn those theories into code, and we're able to kind of make a very good sort of, prediction at that point. And it's just finding all those little insights that most people can't really think about. And like the best way to kind of put it is we're building an MVP right now on corn. We're gonna get very meta into corn for a second. Uh, and we're gonna look at, one, the price of corn. And, America is the largest producer. The state where I'm in, Illinois, is one of the largest producers of corn. Well, then what can influence the price of corn? Well, fertilizer, for instance, we can get more, meta looking at like the chemicals that go into fertilizer. There's the weather that can affect it as well. There's also like government programs like subsidies for farmers. There's also, like the price of the seeds, oil prices. So much can really influence the price. So finding those different types of correlations, that's kind of what Prometheus does to then get like a potential prediction at what could happen.
Wow. So okay, now it's starting to make sense. So if you can bring in data points like, okay, there's a war breaking out in some place in the country that produces some, or that mines the mineral that goes into the fertilizer that goes into the corn in Illinois, like, oh wow, if you like, my brain can't get around that, but obviously an AI could. That's kind of what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Wow.
It
All
reminds me
right.
of the movie Limitless when Bradley Cooper goes in, and my son and I
Yeah.
love that movie. And when you talk about these things, when I saw your prediction of the price of wheat that you made a long time ago and saw how I think it was wheat that we were talking about, and how and you predicted unbelievable spikes that would go and drops that actually happened years later. And it's like the world used to be able to process a certain amount of data, and then all of a sudden you take this pill or you work with CCMC,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden your brain and computers have now opened up to being able to process so much more.
Yeah, no, it's just remarkable how far technology has come. And, just a couple years ago prior to this, it was, almost not feasible. And I think that's where a lot of people really got kind of like what happened. AI was supposed to give us all these amazing things, and, we were kind of, overpromised and underdelivered. But again, within the last couple years, that's when AI kind of really entered into the fourth industrial revolution. And now we have advanced, software that's able to kind of find those granularities. And because of how cheap it's starting to get, cloud computing is great, storing data and then having, really good telecommunication for, cell service that, that could send this information, basically anywhere as long as you have, connected to a cell tower, have that Bluetooth. It it's just very easy to then gather that information and then run it into our code.
That's crazy. After the break here, I want to go into the human element and just, you've got a fascinating story of like, okay, you're talking about some crazy, like advanced stuff. I want to find out who is Mario and where did he come from? All right, welcome back. We just got introduced to Mario Tovar, and he has shown us a little bit about what Prometheus is about, where it's headed, what we can start to look forward to in the world, and especially how it applies to business. But Mario, you're an interesting guy. We've got your resume here. You've got all sorts of qualifications. Did you just start out a genius, or like where did it all start? Where did you grow up and that kind of stuff?
I want to say I'm a genius. I kind of leverage my weaknesses, and I find people who are smarter than me to help me out. And really, I'm proud of my team members and my partners who do this. My CTO, he's a visionary. His name is Caleb Williams, a really smart dude. And luckily, he has a network of remarkable people who are able to kind of come in and do the work. I kind of come in, from a business standpoint to help them out, but I started this, a while back. I kind of came up with the idea. I love doing research. As you mentioned before, I'm an intelligence analyst and I like studying the world. And to me, I wanted to kind of figure out, how are everything kind of connected, what is going on, and, seeing how things were starting to kind of like devolve in a sense where I wasn't happy with some of the leaders that were in charge. I wasn't happy with some businesses and just watching war break out. I kind of felt helpless in a sense, like I couldn't do much. And seeing that, I am coming from a family that's not really, privileged, if you will, first generation on my dad's side, second on my mom's, I'm Mexican, and I don't have the network or connections, unfortunately, but I had to kind of work my way up. And I am the one going to be taking care of my family. So how do I, get some control back so I could feel safe? And how do I make sure I can protect my family? And that's where I started to really come up with this idea of, seeing these sort of patterns taking place initially in the market. How can I, go into, finance and hopefully, try to, play the stock market, if you will. And then
Mm.
eventually I was trying to figure out is there's got to be some sort of like code or, technology. We live in the future. This is, at the time it was 2022, 2023. And that's where I kind of asked more questions and started to just, luckily I was at UIC. That's where I studied. And I met my business partner, Caleb, and just asking the right questions. Can you please help me out? And no matter how many times people kept telling me, no, this isn't possible, to me, it was just like, you know what? I want to keep going. You're telling me no, but I know that these things are out there. And luckily meeting such wonderful people, they kind of, kept me going and giving me hope.
Well, that's an impressive story. Yeah, I admire people that are able to see a need and but also within yourself be able to just pull yourself up and get it done. And knowing that there's something out there and not being limited by what other people are saying and being able to push forward, that's an admirable trait. It's impressive.
Thank you.
I want to ask you, we work with founders, business owners who are, looking to become founders with freedom. And they oftentimes feel like they're constantly reacting to fires. You have something that sounds great, predictive intelligence. So when you think about that person who is a business leader, what are you foreseeing as far as how Prometheus can actually give a business leader foresight and turn decision making from reactive to proactive, and how far proactive can they be? Like, what's the vision here?
Yeah, right now, in my opinion, I kind of think about like a power plant, one of those, nuclear power plants where you're starting to see a meltdown take place and all the, the lights are flashing and you get the analysis paralysis. You don't know where to start. And, everything's kind of happening all at once. You might make a decision and it's like, you shouldn't have started here. You should have started here instead. And for Prometheus, in my opinion, is how do I make sure that I'm giving, taking all this, information that might overwhelm a person and then displaying what needs to be seen first, what can stop the meltdown. Because, at the end of the day, one decision may, be does nothing. It's great that it's flashing. this is not necessary. I should have been able to turn off this fire instead. So for me, that's where I want to be able to display this information on, to your computer. And now you're able to figure out, what do I attack first? And from there, how do you be able to kind of forecast out farther and farther? So it really depends on the industry. And it really depends on, what sort of information we have. And so the more information, if it's, showing, going back to that reference about the wheat prices, we luckily had 40 years of data, which provided us a lot of insights. And even though that the initial testing was just on one, data license, if you will, if we were able to get hundreds more, going into that, getting met up with corn, getting all those information, though the accuracy gets more enhanced. So for us, being able to, help out a leader, whether it be if it's looking at a CFO, for instance, looking at his balance sheet, having those historicals, providing them that insights to, hopefully allocate the resources where he needs to go, or helping somebody in supply chains to making sure that they're able to get the order necessary, being able to connect them to their factories and having everything running smoothly so that at the end of the day, they don't have to stay in the office for 12 to 14 hours putting out these fires.
Hmm.
Do you have
Yeah.
standards for accuracy, and where are you at with that?
Yeah, so we're actually looking at the traditional time series, methods, and off the top of my head, I don't want to, I want to say one thing. I'm not technical, so I don't want to say anything too much on that, just so because I know I'm going to make a mistake. But we are looking at the traditional methods and comparing them to what is, what do they know? And a lot of the times it has issues looking at non-linear like systems, I guess you could say. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. That's where it has that issue. It's like, most times when you're seeing like, ARIMA, which might be that traditional like, moving average, if I'm saying that correctly again. It has a trend where it thinks it's going to continue to go up in pace, and in actuality, it's not how it works. So we're able to then kind of do a comparison side by side, and then I do know that a lot of our team members, and again, like Kayla put together a remarkable team of different academic disciplines, whether it be mathematicians, physicists, and if you want to get more into the nitty gritty, we have those engineers as well that are constantly trying to figure out, I don't think this is correct. They're being very cynical, and they want to try to find any flaws and then keep on retesting. So I love that they're cynical. I love that they're having these high, scientific standards to make sure that we're in full compliance, and that we're kind of being very transparent about it. Like, here's what we did wrong. Here's how we can fix it, and then here's how we can, improve upon it.
That's pretty
Yeah, answers your
amazing.
question.
I have a concern that we're coming up against a break, but when we come back, I want to get into. It seems like depending on somebody's political stance or ideology, when I'm hearing information about what's coming in the economy, somebody says everything's totally falling apart. Somebody says it's like in total good shape, and they're obviously looking at data sources and interpreting it different. So let's cover that when we come back. Welcome back. Okay, so Mario, I was just curious because I'm filtering this through, obviously the lens that I have available to me now. I mean, you're kind of in this future realm that sounds awesome, but it's hard to know what that means, what the implications of it all are. But all I know is that Jeff and I, with Business Freedom Advisors, advising and working with business owners who are trying their best to forecast, to make good decisions with as much foresight as possible. I personally pay a lot of attention to a Twitter feed or whatever, just to like see, okay, what is everybody saying? And sometimes, especially with the economy, whether it's interest rates or inflation, like, yeah, over the last several years, inflation, like somebody says inflation's the worst ever, somebody else says it's not so bad. And it makes me wonder, like, okay, this tool Prometheus is obviously looking at the source material. At the end of the day, it's hard to know. I guess I'm jaded by who do I trust? Can I even trust this tool, and why?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I guess at the end of the, looking at like, different types of economic statistics, it really depends on the school of principle in which, an economist will, really believe. And it also really depends on who's in charge at the end of the day. One administration might believe in one form of economics, another administration may believe in another form. And so that sort of, inconsistency causes a lot of volatility. And I'm of somebody that kind of believes in Keynesian economics, where, at the end of the day, you have to have proper discipline, monetary policy and fiscal policy need to have, inverse relationship. What is the inflation rates? Healthy, margin is a 2%, inflation, and hopefully the central bank is able to then keep unemployment at 5%. And being able to kind of gather that information is very important. The US government, for instance, is a very old government. They have legacy systems. And unfortunately, when it comes to collecting economic data, they will sometimes have to call people. They do surveys that are very inefficient. And, small mom and pop shops, they don't have the same manpower as a corporation that's able to dedicate an entire department to calling, the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Sometimes there's a delay in that. And so my ultimate goal is how do you provide this sort of resource to mom and pop shops that don't have the resources to call these agencies, and being able to then transmit that information. And hopefully, at the end of the day, the Federal Reserve is supposed to be independent, and they do make very good decisions, but bringing in, these sort of political decisions, keeping your constituents happy, an election cycle's coming up next year or 4 years, having those sort of very short-sighted approaches could, negatively impact the economy. So at the end of the day is how do I make sure that if, somebody in charge, Congress or who's ever over there, if they want to make a policy decision, whether it be increase taxes or do something, let's simulate it. If in a perfect world, Prometheus is connected to everything, you're now able to then figure out and do those ripple effects of if we do increase taxes or lower taxes, if we do increase deficit spending, how is this going to affect me? Because inflation is a hidden tax. We just don't really take that into account.
Hmm.
Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, it kind of, I want to go a little bit deeper because, so obviously different economists have different theories. Keynesian is a very prominent one. One that I've looked into, Richard Werner, he argues that money creation happens at a small bank level and not through government spending. So it's a little different. So that's where I'm wondering, like, okay, if Prometheus is it just looking at one economic model, or is it able to analyze all these different models that seem to be like they don't even agree at these high level economists that are smarter than I am. How does it tie in both of those things to say, okay, here's what Prometheus thinks is going to happen?
Yeah, no, Prometheus isn't like a one size fits all, and that's what my CTO says.
Okay.
And kind of looking at it from like a high level perspective, the economy is just a giant interconnected system. It's very complex. It's called a dynamical system at the end of the day, where all these interdependent, factors affect each other. And so, how do you be able to then zoom into the micro level and figure out, and again, every industry, every microeconomy has its own different, approaches. And so being able to tailor this approach using Prometheus, using these sort of rules to then add it into the bigger picture. So ultimately is solving one puzzle, following these specific rules, then adding it again to another puzzle and kind of building upwards to that big picture view so that it's able to take into consideration all those sort of like, interconnected events. Hopefully, again, that kind of like answers those types of questions.
Yeah, we're going into the real detail. I'd love to bring it back up to 100,000 foot level.
So ultimately, if you were able to be a part of everything, if Prometheus had its fingers in everything, you could, and you knew what the economy was doing in all of the different countries around the world, and you just had all the data being poured in, you could predict, all the prices for everything happening into the future at a high level. That's fascinating, and I assume we're not at the technological place yet of being able. Of course, there's access and all of that, and people letting someone have that data. But I assume we're not at the level of being able to compute like that yet. Like AI does still have some limitations.
It depends on the type of, AI itself. Like again, it can get very granular. There's different types with machine learning, for instance, and especially when it comes to the form that we use. it's been around for quite a while and it became commercially viable, and there has to be a ton of technology that kind of gets involved to allow it to be simplistic. Our model again, we did a ton at the time. Our scientists did a ton of math, and looking at it, it seems simplistic, but coming up, sitting down, doing that very hard level math takes time, but it allows us to be very efficient. Now we're not using as much resources, and so most AI, if you think about it, like ChatGPT, for instance, it's a black box. And in order to get these predictions, again, you're kind of shoving in all this information in, and it's, words, it's numbers, and getting that sort of prediction of what should happen. We don't know what's going on inside. And in order for these predictions to get better, you need more powerful GPUs. And so, next, ChatGPT 5 just came out, ChatGPT 6, you're going to need even more powerful GPUs. But if you just take away some of those sort of the data that goes in, and again, like we don't need confidential information like, personal information, like, the words and things like that, like the human language aspect, just the numbers. Now the model is significantly smaller. And now that we're actually putting in, these detailed theories, physics-based, statistics-based, the model's more efficient. Now it's CPU optimized and it's now able to, be software-based. So if you're an old, government that has a ton of old, technology, or you're a mom and pop shop that can't, afford these, advanced, hardware, don't worry. Luckily, ours is software based and it could run on the systems that you use, making it more efficient. So
Mm.
at the end of the day, you can get those same sort of prediction capabilities just using very complex math, simplifying it down to that, granular level to then run it on old software to get very good prediction still, regardless.
That's
Cool.
fascinating. I think that's where a lot of the beauty comes from, is making the complex simple, and I love that.
All right. So when we come back, let's dig into Jeff. I want to get your thoughts on how to make this practical for our listeners who are, super interested in the business health diagnostic and what it can do and how this might add into that. All right, welcome back. So when we left, Jeff, I was wanting to bring it back to you and the business health diagnostic that we can make available to people listening. And with you, when you hear what Mario's talking about, what reflections do you have about the business health diagnostic and what's available to people listening and our clients?
Yeah, so Mario, with our BHD, we call it the Business Health Diagnostic. It's a mix of an interview process we go through with people to give them rankings in different areas like the opportunity, the revenue engine, risk management, balance sheet, that kind of thing. We mix that interview and rank those rankings for their organization, and then we bring in some of the financials as well. And we take a balance sheet and profit loss statement, sometimes depending on the organization, cash flow statement too, and we bring those in and we look at what's the value of the company, what's the cash flow, and what our goal is to help people to raise their cash flow, but also raise the valuation of their company so that they have the opportunity to be free in what they want to do, if they want to sell or if they just want to increase the cash flow and run at a maximized level for their organization. But then it shows what levers to pull to be able to reach those goals. And so how does something like you're talking about with Prometheus, how does that factor in for companies that we're working with BHDs?
Yeah. So, how I kind of look at this is you guys kind of come in and, you guys can have your own software that you might be using to kind of like take in all this sort of information, to kind of give you an idea of like a high level, what's going on. This is like your war strategy. And
Mhm.
then, the one thing that you're probably missing, and again, this is where the human aspect kind of comes in, and this is going to be the most grueling part is how do you forecast? How do you get that future value and how do you do these sort of things. And at the end of the day, where Prometheus can kind of come in is this could be a tool for you guys. Now you're able to then kind of don't have to worry too much. This sort of system kind of comes on, gives you that intuitive capability to forecast, and is able to kind of help you adapt and to, again, make you, give you the best decisions so that you're able to help your clients out. And again, at the end of the day, it's how do you give your clients the best decisions for them? How are you able to then improve their sort of, operations, give them, save resources and hopefully increase revenue. And so with Prometheus, it kind of is able to help out if you have that information available.
That's
Right.
awesome.
That's incredibly awesome. But then and then it can help the company themselves too if they have if if what does that company need for Prometheus to be able to come in and help them? Is it the which time stamp data or I don't remember the exact term you used. What is
Yeah,
that?
time series
Time
data.
series.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, if you have like spreadsheets, like Excel, CSV, those sort of things, if you already have software already that's able to kind of take in again any sort of numbers, whether it be financial transactions, economic indicators, those sorts of things, it could take in. And then in addition to that too, we're also able to provide you data. So like if a company has X amount. It gives you pretty good accuracy, but if we're able to provide, oh, we might need information on commodities or, what's going on with the, economy, we could then help you, improve those accuracies by providing that sort of additional, insights.
That's great. And so one of the things we do with working with people is we help them to organize their books in a way that investors are looking for. So they can
Hmm.
either find funding or sell. And so we help them organize their books in a way that makes sense, that helps them make managerial decisions, um, but also to be able to maximize the efficiency of the company, because then the multiplier, when you do sell, the multiplier increases the more efficient the company runs. The better it is, the more secure it is. People are more likely to buy a company that runs well than a company that doesn't, that has a lot of inefficiencies. And so the multiplier goes up. And so if you're looking at a $1 million purchase, your multiplier goes up three times. That's 3 million more dollars you get, just from running it more efficiently. And so what I'm hearing is that your tool can help people to really multiply their money by a lot. Is that true?
Exactly. That's kind of the big goal for us is being able to, increase your sort of value. If your company, you're maybe hemorrhaging or losing out on, this area, the technology, if again you have the necessary data available, we could then tell you, oh, right here is you're making, there's some spillage here. Let's clean this up, and then hopefully you're now able to, optimize your operations, and then hopefully this will then lead to an increased valuation.
That's great.
Mario, as we're wrapping up this episode, I want to bring it back to you. And you are relatable to us, Jeff and I. You are relatable to our audience. Entrepreneurial mindset, like the movers and shakers, making things happen, wanting to make an impact on the world, looking to build a business that can create freedom so that they can ultimately be a founder with freedom. So on your journey, as you think about where you are today and where you're going next, just share like what stage of your journey are you on? What's next? Maybe is there a challenge you're facing, and what's opportunities are coming up in your near future here?
Yeah, I think I'm just getting started. This is the first company that I'm, setting up, and my goal is to, continue to keep building up, reinvesting back into my company, bringing on more talent. I'm very hopeful for my future. I'm very hopeful for my company, and I'm not looking at the, many people may see the economy and being kind of, fearful. I'm very optimistic. I'm at the forefront of advanced technologies. And for me, at least, I'm looking forward to being able to, one of the reasons why I connect so well with you guys is I would like to get some freedom too, where I'm able to kind of, take a little break because I've been working nonstop for when I was in university, when I graduated, I'm still working and I want to be able to take a little break. I want to exercise a little bit more, get into playing some squash, go biking a little bit more, go to the gym, have some fun, and kind of live the life I sacrificed, and hopefully, reconnect with some of my friends. Go out to nice restaurants. I miss it. Getting back to that. And I guess like one of the biggest, struggles that I have is being at the forefront of, advanced technologies. I think like where I struggle the most, and I'm still working with a bunch of my advisors. I'm grateful to have people, both you, Scott and Jeff, who are able to kind of sit down with me and ask me these questions. Let's simplify it. So I can find, comparisons to how I can describe this technology. Because if there's nothing for me to grasp what's new to what's not available, that's hard. And I think to me, it's being able to take something super complex, and trying to describe it to either investors or prospective clients. If, a person can't grasp this, they're going to be confused and they're going to walk away. And, they're walking away from a great, service. But at the end of the day, if I can't connect with them and have a good conversation, and no matter how, I could be the smartest person in the world, but if I cannot connect on a human level, it's a loss of opportunity. And I think to me, it's just trying to be able to say this in plain English.
Mm-hmm. Very relatable. I think we can all relate to some of that stuff. And one thing I know about you is you're well connected. I know there's a lot of people that believe in you. You've got investors. You've got people that are very interested in being a part. You've got a great advisory team, great staff. So see great things in your future. I know we get to hang out in Sardinia in a couple weeks. So looking forward to that. The mastermind in Sardinia is going to be huge, and I know you're going to get a lot out of it, as I'm going to get a lot out of it, and going to make some good connections there. Unfortunately, we're out of time for today's episode. So if you're listening and you are interested in some of the things we talked about, especially if you're interested in that business health diagnostic with some advanced looking forward tools, the next step for you is go to www.TriMetricQuiz.com. So it's just TriMetricQuiz.com. That's the first step. That'll get you a free quiz, and then we'll be in contact with you and get you set up with a business health diagnostic. If you want to be introduced to Mario, let us know. We'll put his information in the show notes. Mario, thank you so much for being a part of the TriMetric Roadmap podcast today. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to meeting you. And, thank you for, giving me the opportunity, and thank you for being amazing. If it wasn't for people like you who are really just wanting to help out so many wonderful people, and I can't say thank you to everybody, but I'm grateful for so many wonderful people in my life, and it really makes me want to get back.
Well, it takes one to know one. So right back at you. Thanks for listening to the TriMetric Roadmap powered by Business Freedom Advisors. I've been your host, Scott Landis. If you're growing a business but something still feels off, you're not alone. That's exactly why we created the TriMetric Quiz. It's not a personality test, it's a powerful diagnostic tool that shows you where you're in alignment and where things may be silently slipping off track across your business, life, and leadership. It only takes a few minutes, and the clarity you'll gain is a game changer. Go to TriMetricQuiz.com to take the quiz now before the cost of staying stuck gets any higher. Until next time, stay focused, stay aligned, and keep building a business that truly supports your life.